today I broke it up into two parts. I was going to start with an end user experience. I was going to do an FB50 for some mass posting of journal entries. I'm sure there's some people on the phone here that are using the FB01 with the posting keys. Just know Winshuttle works either way, whether you're using debits and credits or posting keys. We also work with custom T codes. So if you have any Z or Z transactions, we can work with those. And then the nice thing with Winshuttle, Winshuttle is not only a tool to get data into SAP, but we can also pull data out of SAP. And since we're getting close to the year end here for the round trip experience, so that's where the data is in SAP, I want to pull it back, make some changes or updates, and then load the data back into. I thought I would pull some information on some budgets and show you how you can incorporate Winshuttle into your year-end budgeting process. And even if it's not year-end, if you have a different fiscal year than year-end, how you can use Winshuttle to automate some of the budgeting activities that you would have throughout that process that you would have. So with that, let me start with the first example that I have here. This is just a spreadsheet that I've put together. Once again, Winshuttle can work with any of the fields that you would have in your process. So if you have different header or field level items that you would want to incorporate into this process, we will also work with COPA postings, all of that maintained for you. That you can use into here. The nice thing is we give the users an Excel add-in, so it's a standard COM add-in that you're able to do your validations and simulations from. And when I click any of the buttons to do the interactions with SAP, as Ryan had mentioned from a security perspective, so all of the controls and everything that you have in place from a SOX compliance, you're not able to do anything in SAP that you don't have access to if you were to go through the GUI from your desktop. So the first thing that it was doing is going out to SAP, checking to make sure that I have access, in this case, to FB50. And then what it's going to do is come back and say, okay, you have access to FB50. Let me plug in my headers. Let me plug in my line items and make sure everything is correct. So in this case, I'm getting all of my success messages that come back into my document. And that way I would know everything is correct and I'm able to run it into SAP. But a lot of times you'll have instances where different pieces of information might not be correct. And in this case, since I'm doing a mass load scenario, I'm going to plug a few of the different records that have some errors in them, because sometimes when you're running the LSMWs or sometimes some of the other upload tools that you might be using, once they encounter an error, they stop running, or you have to go fix that one before you can run the rest of them. It's a process that you have to go through as it's updating and checking. But you'll notice here with Winshuttle, as it's going through and it encounters an error, it keeps checking, it keeps going back and forth and saying, okay, this one's incorrect. It checks the next record for me and keeps moving through the process. So even though we encountered an error, we treat each record as an individual process going into SAP. So the second record errored on me, it checked the third one, it came back as success, and the third one errored, or the fourth one errored on me, and it keeps progressing through. So the nice thing here is if you wanted to use it for, say, a month-end bank rec process, I could download the file from the bank, pull 40, 50,000 checks, hit the clear process. It could go clear all the ones that I need to, and then I could come back and fix those and have it run for the ones that didn't error out on it. And I'll touch on that, as I run this also. The other piece is, even though it's encountered the errors, and I was saying, the user can live within the Excel experience for the whole process, here you'll see that the cost center didn't exist. So if I put my cursor on the field and I do the lookup values, it's actually going to go out to SAP and return the screens. So in this case, it would be two screens because I have my first selection screen based on the controlling area and company code. And then I actually get this selection criteria for the actual cost centers. So if it were just one screen for it, that would also work. And I can pick the actual cost center that I wanted and say, okay. The next pop-up is going to ask me, do I want Winshuttle to fix this for me in the spreadsheet? And if I say yes, it automatically fixes the value. And then I could run the validation process again and get my successes here. For the sake of time, I'm going to go ahead and process this with the second one having the error on it. You could also set it up to where the users have to get all successes before it will actually allow them to run into SAP if that was something you wanted to institute for your business on it. But let me show you if I do have one that has an error when I actually go to process into SAP, how that works, and then how you can tie that into where I was saying from a bank rec process. Let's say I was clearing 40 or 50,000 checks that I had downloaded from the bank, and the nice thing, those could go across multiple company codes. and I could come back and then fix, the 40 or 50 that were saying missing a check number, or the amounts didn't match, or, some error was caused in the SAP system on it. But as I was saying before, the ones that had caused the errors, they don't actually process into SAP. So if you can see here, I had document 591, this one errored out, and the next one was 592 and then 593. So even though it tried to process into SAP and encountered the error, say I didn't run the validation process or I didn't force them to run the validation, it makes no document, so there was no partial documents consumed, no record in SAP that I tried to process this and it failed. The record is either good or bad in SAP, and it would work whether, I was, using FB01 or FB50 for this process. But with Winshuttle, I could come back and I could do the lookups and fix this, but let me just go ahead and type the value in myself, and then I could change the run method to run only the errored rows. So in this instance, I'm telling Winshuttle to go ahead and only process those rows that failed the first time I ran it. Don't reprocess those that I had run the first time. So the nice thing here is in SAP, if I had tried to run this a second time, or if I used some other methods to getting this data into SAP, it would have actually processed the other, the first, the third, and the fourth records again, but you can see here that it only processed one record for me, and the last one I did was 593. It now did 594, but it didn't process the first, the third, or the fourth one again, because from a Winshuttle standpoint, it saw that I had already posted those into SAP, so that way we don't reprocess the same records a second time. And there's some other fail safes that you could put into place to make sure you're, accidentally don't push the run buttons twice from a Winshuttle perspective. And it all depends on how you want to have them set up from a user perspective on that. But that's how you can use Winshuttle to automate getting your journal entries into SAP. It also would work for, invoices or, whatever the process might be from a finance perspective, assets, whatever the T code is that you're wanting to try to automate. We also work with BAPIs if you would want to use a BAPI approach to getting the information into SAP. Now, as I had mentioned, the other side that I wanted to show is where you're going to start with a blank spreadsheet. So this is where I don't have any information. I'm not just doing a create process in SAP, but I've already got the information in SAP, and I want to pull this information back to Excel. I want to do something with the information, and then, in this case, I'm going to load some changes back into SAP. But you could also use this for reporting purposes. So if you wanted to do, and I had set this up to do a quick AR aging report. So if we were put on hold from a shipping perspective, or somebody wouldn't send us something, I had a quick little spreadsheet set up to say, okay, here's the vendor numbers or their names, and set it up to, okay, here's all the invoices that we have out there for them, and they need us to pay this amount for them, and I could set them up to, okay, here's the invoices. If I pay these ones, we can get off of our shipping hold. And I actually had it tied into the F110 process for the check runs, and I could, do an on-demand check run to get them sent, and I could say, here's your check number, we'll get this off to you as quick as we can. Then that would typically release the hold for, getting the shipments, delivered that we would need. So there's a lot you can do with Winshuttle, and even linking the T codes together to automate whole processes with it. But some of it can start with the information that's in SAP. So here I'm going to go extract some budgets from SAP, and you can set up the selection criteria. And this isn't necessarily the selection criteria that's in SAP for the reports that they have, but you can use any of the fields that are in the tables, in this case that I'm using, and use those as selection criteria as I'm pulling this information out of SAP for you. So here I've got some selection criteria, some, the cost elements, and, the different pieces that I want to use in some years. And let's say I want to go pull some old budgets back out, and I'm going to say okay. So now once again, just like on the upload standpoint, it's going to check to make sure I'm authorized to this. The other nice piece with Winshuttle, we don't require access to SE16. Based on your user profile, you have access to T codes, and those T codes are actually made up of tables. So those tables based on the T codes are how we control your access to what you're able to pull from SAP for you. So if I have access to, say, FB50 or, KPO6 or even, say an MMO3 for materials, I could pull out information on materials, but then in no way could I then turn around and create or change a material because I wouldn't have O1 or O2 T code access to that information. But I say from an analyst role or from a role that I need to pull information out to set something up, I could have it to pull the information out, but I couldn't actually make the changes into SAP for it. It's all controlled by your user profile in SAP, what you're able to use Winshuttle for. So in this case here, you can see it went and pulled the budgeting information out of SAP for me based on my selection criteria. And it's pulling it out by month that I had set up, and depending on your distribution key, whether it's even or by month for it. The other piece I wanted to point out is with the Winshuttle extraction tool, I can build in formulas and calculations into the extraction process. So if you can see in column I here, I've built in a formula that says go sum the totals of each of the months for me and add that into this column here. So once I get to the end of this list, you'll notice I don't have the formulas in the Excel sheets, and it's only going to write the formulas for however many records get pulled out. So that way I don't have to worry about somebody deleting a column or, you know, deleting something off or moving. Say I've got some VLOOKUPs or I've got this tied to some pivot tables I'll show you here in a second. But I can let the Winshuttle toolset write those formulas back to the Excel spreadsheets for me, and I don't have to worry about somebody deleting something off. It can write them out every time. So this time, say I pulled, you know, I think it was 74 records or however many header rows I have here. The next time if it pulled 750, you know, it would write the formulas out every time that it runs for me on there. And then, like I was saying, I'm able to then take this information, and let me just grab, say, this line here, and if I change my amount from 200, and we'll say 100, 200, and we'll just make this go up by 100 each month on this over through December on it, and I wanted to update this budget on that one. You'll notice that it automatically updates my total because I've got a formula built into that process for it. And I also use this for our KPIs, so we would load those into SAP. So our head counts and different things that we weren't storing in SAP, we would use this type of a setup to load that information into SAP. And then I can switch gears to load the budget information. And in this case, we'll just load that one record in since I didn't change all of them. But we use this to pull out all of our budgets. We ran it through our budgeting process for the spreadsheets to calculate all of our supply costs and, you know, overheads and everything that we had. And at the end of that process, we would load the new budgets in for the next fiscal year and then, you know, by year. And so we could actually use the canned reports in SAP for it. But with the round trip process, like I was saying, I could pull this information out. I'm going to update just this one record here, and I'll go ahead and I'll say run. And if you notice, I wanted to point out while this is running, I've got the one tab here that starts with BK. You'll notice it's going to create another tab here for me. Because as Ryan was mentioning, we give you the ability to, what I'm going to say, undo or correct in case you do make a mass update. So I'm only updating one. But let's say I was updating all of these budgets or loading my new budgets in, and say I updated and I forgot to change the wrong, you know, budget version, or, you know, I made some update or I changed the wrong company code or plant or whatever it was that I was updating. I did the wrong one, and I need to get back to what that information was. From a Winshuttle perspective, there's a little checkbox that says back up the data, so we can actually create a record of what the values were before I made those changes. So you can see here that this information was actually 200 for each month, as opposed to the new 1, 2, 3, 4 going across each month. So I could easily copy these back, make the updates, and load those back into what they were before I made those changes. And as I was saying, I have these tied to pivot tables, so you can use any Excel functionality. So if I just click on the pivot table here and I click refresh, I can then set these up here with the graphs and the charts. And as I was saying, I had this tied to AR aging reports. So if I actually would double click on the values within the pivot table, it would actually go pull the actual line items associated with that vendor to show me which ones, were over 120 days old. So then I could look at those to see which ones needed to be paid, or which ones, had been marked, and flagged for not payment, or what was causing the issues on those. So it's got the full functionality of the Excel process that you can build into this with it. And then the last piece, I'll just grab the one that we ran here real quick in the spreadsheet. So if I want to pull them out in a slightly different fashion, you'll see here this is the cost center that we just updated, and I could plug in the information here. I can also go pull them out by single values out of the system. So let me go ahead and I'll just run this, and you'll see we'll get the new values coming out in this type of fashion. So I had this set up for our assets. So whenever we would do transfers or acquisitions or disposals or intercompany transfers, different things like that, you'll see here I obviously messed something up when I was pulling this one out. I think I grabbed the wrong. Sorry, if I could see that small. on my screen here. Let me go ahead and run that again. But you'll see here, hopefully when I run this one, I think that one was a bad list that I hadn't updated. But I had set this up for our asset transfers, disposals, things like that, so I could go pull out all the spending and internal orders that have been tied to the assets, different things like that, pull those back into what I would consider an Excel form and have those populate the values, so then we could print those off and have them signed, different things like that. And then Winshuttle also does have a form and a workflow capability that you could wrap all of this around, so if you needed approvals and the different information sent around to be collected and collaboration process, all of that can be done with Winshuttle. I just didn't pull that into today's discussion for everybody. This is what we refer to as Studio, so just take a quick second. With Winshuttle we have two versions. There's a version 10 and a version 11, so I'm going to be using our new version 11. That's the Winshuttle Studio piece, so it has all of the tool sets into it. So if we have any existing customers that are on here, if you're on version 10, this is the new version 11 piece that has all of the tool sets in it. So I'm going to be using transactions I'm going to create from a recording, and since we chose FB50, I'll go ahead and plug in the FB50 T code that I wanted to use. And my data set, I'll use Excel, and like I said, you've got a few other options that would be available to you. So I'll go ahead and I'll say to start the recording. So the first thing, as I was saying, and the authorization is in progress. So whether I'm actually creating the recording or running it from a runner perspective, I always have to have access in SAP to that process. So here, hopefully you can see the first pop-up is going to ask me, for the company code that I want to use. And within SAP, some users may have the pop-up, some users may not have the pop-up. We have ways to handle that, and I'll show you in the mapper piece how we handle whether or not you have the pop-up enabled or disabled, and it'll work for however the users have that set up for them. And you can go through, typically I'll go through once, without Winshuttle on, plug in the information into the T code, and then I'll go through and just hit the space bar and pick the values in the fields. You'll see here I'm going through the FB50 process. After I plug in the header information, it would help if I would actually hit the right values. I would hit enter on it, and then I will come down to the line item section and I'll plug in some of the information here. You would use any of the fields, any custom fields, or if you'd even had the custom T code or whatever the process may be for your journal entries, you would go through that. We also work with the button, so if this were a COPA posting, I would click the button, it'll pop up the extra screens and that I would go through for the COPA postings. In my system, this would be the minimum that I would fill out, but I would just go through here and click or hit any of the fields that you would want to have for the actual upload process to be available from the end user perspective. What I'm going to do then is click the line and then say insert a row, and that's going to shift it down one and then create it so I can then enter on the first line for it. This is where I go ahead and I just park the document at this point, and I'll show you how I convert this to a post document, so I don't have to go back and re-record a second script. If I wanted to have a post document, I can just change one letter in the recording and it'll become a post script for me. And if I wanted to make it a park script, so whether you chose the FB or FB50 or the FB50, I'm going to kind of do it both ways for you because I actually do it the same way for it. But you'll see here it's going to pop up and say that I'm recording is complete, and then it's going to create the mapping. So once it goes through and compiles, okay, this is everything that I touched on, and like I said, you would just mirror this to whatever your process is for your company. So whatever the header fields are, you can click on the tabs for the currency conversions and whatever you may use, and then whatever fields are in there for the line items, you would go through that process and just click on those fields for it. From a mapping perspective, you've got a couple different options here. You've got your basic view and expert view, and I'll show you both of these here in just a second. So you could do your company code, and then if we come down here to the document type, that would be my header fields that we clicked on for this process. So if I want, I could go ahead and pick all of these, and in the bottom section, if I just drag up from the bottom up to the top, you'll see that it auto maps all of those for me. So that was where my header information was. I can also drag up each one of those individually. Within here, you can also do the auto map. So that will just map everything from A to the right, depending on how you want to have it set up. So this would be if you wanted to build the spreadsheet from scratch. If you were doing the round trip process that I had shown, you would potentially, in my experience, I usually build either the template here or the extract first, and then if I had built the extract first, I would open up an existing spreadsheet and say go open up an existing FB50 or FB01 or whatever the process may be, and open up an existing spreadsheet, and it'll load down here at the bottom. So if you do have any existing spreadsheets that your company is using for journal entries in this case, or something that you like, or something that you've already got in place that has all of your backup tabs and analysis and everything built into it, you can usually just Winshutleize those spreadsheets. You don't have to start from scratch every time on it. And as I was saying, I could come in and then just drag and drop each individual line also. The mapping does not have to mirror the order that it goes in SAP. You can put spaces, you could have columns that don't get loaded into SAP. The layout doesn't have to follow the same order here as it does in the spreadsheet. There's no correlation between what it's doing in SAP and the way that I've got it built in my spreadsheet. So you can have those laid out however you would want, especially if you've got more than one T code in the spreadsheet doing those different activities. So I've also built these out to have the FBO or FBO8 process in them. So if I needed to do a document reversal process as part of this, so instead of doing accrual entries, I may post the entries and then go reverse them on the first of the next month. You could set those up that way for it to do those. And as I was saying, the other tab, the expert view tab, goes into a little bit more information. Same setup here. You'll see here's the company code for the first pop-up. Here's my header information. Here's my line items on it. The expert view, the greens are anywhere that I've changed screens or hit enter. So if you'll notice between my header and my line items, when I said I had hit enter, that was because I wanted another green section since it's all on the same screen. Makes it a little bit easier to put your loop in. But the first initial pop-up where I was saying somebody may or may not have the company code pop-up in their system, there's just a simple box. You say skip that screen if it's not present. So there's nothing you do. So Winshuttle's a no coding approach to making these updates. So, I had the pop-up, say somebody else doesn't have it. It'll just skip over this section if that pop-up for the company code isn't there, and it'll take their default company code as they're running through that process. The second set is going to be for their header information. So you would just go through here and make any updates. The little asterisk is if I want to make those required. So we'll adhere to any required SAP fields, but if you have from a business perspective additional required fields, you can make those required here. So from a Winshuttle standpoint, I can't load it, especially if it's like a text field or something that's not required in SAP, but you want it from a business perspective. I can just make the field required here, and Winshuttle won't allow you to load it without that being filled out. But for journal entries, obviously I'm going to want more than one line for that process. So here's my line item section, and I'm going to want to go ahead and create a loop for that. So you'll see that it's going to make the section red, so I can easily see what I want to loop through, especially if I need to go past more than one screen or anything like that. I could put this into here, and I'm going to put an identifier in, and I left this column I blank, so I'm going to say my identifier is going to be in column I. By default, it's going to be header and detail, but I can make this H and L for line items or whatever you wanted to put in as an identifier. And typically this, if you're going to use your own existing spreadsheets, this identifier may be the thing that we need to add in to an existing spreadsheet for a journal entry upload. It's just so we would know the header and the line items for it. But as I enter that in, if you noticed over here, anything that was set up as a line item automatically shifts down one to the line item section for the header and the detail automatically for me. And I had mentioned I had made this a park. So the command in SAP is BP for park, and BU is upload or post. So if you just change the one letter here, that makes it a post script in SAP. So I could do a file save as with a BP and I have a park script, do a file save as with a BU, and I now have a post script. So I don't have to re-record for that process if you wanted to do it that way. Or you could go through the different T codes and create the process that way for it. And then from this standpoint, you can go in and put any conditions or anything that you want to build into this from a business perspective. But at this standpoint, if I switch over to the run, and we would actually set this up as say a journal that we would actually want to post. So we'll make this, hopefully if my math works out here, a balanced entry on this one. And then you'll notice I did the validation and then the running. So if we come back over here to the mapping piece, up here at the top is my run log and my validation log. And those can go anywhere. They could be at the beginning, at the end. I just wouldn't recommend using one of the fields that you're using for the mapping piece. From a field perspective, since it's going from Excel to SAP, you drag and drop from the bottom up to, I'm going to consider this SAP and this Excel down here. Since these come from SAP, I'm going to say my validation log, I'm going to drag from the top down. I'm going to put that in O, and then my run log, I'll just drag it down and I'll put that in, say, Q. But it's going to notice that the header columns here change from the green to kind of the orangey yellow shade, which will just drag those from what I consider SAP down to Excel for it. And then when we switch over here to the run, you'll see I've got my validate and run logs. If I had run it without mapping those, it'll just put them at the end automatically for me at the last map cells for it. But now when I click the validate, it's going to ask me, do I want to save, the script and the Excel file? So I'll go ahead and I'll just save those off to the default locations. And you can customize where you want those to save, whether it's your desktop or, wherever you want to put them. And it's going to run through and I now get my success messages. By default, I don't have to do anything special for the lookup values. So the F4 functionality that's built in, as long as it exists in the SAP screens and it exists for the field, so that would work for it. And then the last piece to this, I'll go ahead and I'll click the run. So this will now go out to SAP and try to do this actual posting into SAP based on the script that we just created. And I think 595, was the last document that we had posted, unless somebody else had posted one in the system. But you'll see here that it went and created the next document. And that's the actual SAP message returned from the SAP instance. So the bottom left-hand side of the screen, that's what gets returned to you. We have a nice way to customize those messages if they're not meaningful to the users. So there's an easy way that you can go in and, say it's a German message or something that's not helpful from a user perspective. There's an easy way you can go in and say, your problem is column C, or, this is your problem based on the error message from an SAP perspective. And then the last piece, if I wanted to put these into the spreadsheets, there's a publish button, and you would pick the script, and then it knows that's the Excel file that I use from a mapping perspective, or I could go browse to another one, and then the sheet that I want to publish it to, and then do I want to overwrite, the header files or leave it there, and I would just click publish and it'll go put it into that Excel file for me. And then that puts us back to where we started from an end user perspective, where they can live within the Excel experience for everything that they need to do. So that's taking it full circle from the end user experience of the FB50s, which we went through, so loading it in mass. And if I wanted this to load in mass, I would just copy this down here and load another document and start with a new H and a D. There's nothing special from a script perspective. It goes until it sees another H for the new header, and it will start loading the next journal entry for me. And like I said, this could have been over here in column A or wherever you wanted to put it, but there's nothing special you do for mass loading scenarios. It's all driven by this loop ID column. So it'll load for this journal entry until it sees the next H, and then that treats that as the new record going into the system for that.